Well, last week was a difficult one for the government, forced into 2 U-turns in the space of 3 days. Well, one of those was on child refugees from Europe, with the Prime Minister facing a rebellion from his own backbenchers, agreeing to accept unaccompanied children from Europe's camps. It's a subject on which the SNP's Westminster leader, Angus Robertson, has been leading the charge, and he joins me now from Elgin. And a very good morning to you. And just let me ask you about that. It's been said, you've heard it before, I know, that the SNP in Westminster is the real opposition, and particularly on an issue like that. Are you rather filling, I suppose, the void left by Labour, beset with all its troubles?
Well, very good morning from sunny Speyside. And yes, the SNP is the effective opposition at Westminster. The Labour Party is spending more time fighting each other than fighting the Tories. And there are a whole series of issues that matter to voters in Scotland, but across the rest of the United Kingdom too, from austerity to issues like how we deal with refugees. And on these, it's the SNP that's been leading the charge, and we will continue to do so. We've got big decisions coming up shortly on remaining within the European Union or being taken out against our will, or whether we're going to waste the best part of £200 billion replacing weapons of mass destruction. On these issues, the SNP will be battling on austerity, on Europe, on Trident, and trying to make sure that the Tories do not cut away from the public services that really matter across the UK and in devolved Scotland, where we now have that straight fight between the SNP, re-elected to government, and Tory opposition.
Yeah, but I mean, is it the fact then that inadvertently, because of the analysis you've given us there of the state of play in Westminster, that the stays are becoming loosened, as it were, on that SNP self-denying ordinance that you didn't get involved in affairs that didn't affect Scotland?
Well, we always said that where we could forge a progressive majority in Westminster, that we would do that. But there are issues that have come along which have actually impacted in Scotland. So let's take Sunday trading as an example, which people say, oh, well, this is only a proposal that was going to impact in England. Well, no, it wasn't, because the government gave no safeguards to the knock-on consequences to workers in Scotland. So that would have been a retrograde step. And that's why we signalled that we would be opposing the government on that, and it caused them to U-turn on their plans. Similarly, on issues like the refugee question, because of sustained opposition, yes, from the SNP, but from others too. Goodness me, Alf Dubs in the House of Lords, Yvette Cooper from the Labour Party. There are people right across the House, and including Conservatives, who don't like much which the Tories are actually doing. So where we can, we will work with others. The government at Westminster only has a majority of 12, often on an issue-by-issue basis. They won't have a majority at all. And the SNP will work constructively with other parties at Westminster to oppose the Tories. And Nicola Sturgeon, re-elected as First Minister shortly in the Scottish Parliament, what a fantastic result that was, with the SNP vote going up, and is actually having more MSPs, members of the Scottish Parliament, than the next 3 parties combined. Yeah. We will work with other parties, both at Westminster and in the Scottish Parliament, to try and get the best. Well, indeed, that's the way that the electoral system works. Curious, isn't it? Yes, we won more seats in the constituencies, we won more votes than any political party has ever won in the Scottish Parliament. But because we have a proportional system, it gave us the result that we got, which saw us getting, as I say, more than all of the next 3 parties added together. But there's still a pro-independence majority in the Scottish Parliament, and so we will fight for the best deal there and deliver the best in terms of public services and reform to our public services. And at the same time at Westminster, we will oppose the Tories tooth and nail and work as the effective opposition, not just on issues that matter directly to people in Scotland, but also the rest of the UK, and on matters such as Europe and international affairs, where sadly the Labour Party has taken its eye off the ball.
Just want to get back. Well, just want to get back to that issue in Westminster there and see it through the focus, that very important issue of child refugees. And you mentioned there the Labour figures who were involved on that issue, Yvette Cooper and Lord Dubs. Of course, Labour tabled that amendment, but Mr Corbyn didn't ask any questions about it at the last session of Prime Minister's Questions. Do you think Jeremy Corbyn's pretty useless?
Well, on this issue, yes. On others, perhaps less so, but often I am sat there, because I get, as the SNP leader at Westminster, I get 2 questions every week, and of course I have to follow Jeremy Corbyn, and I sit there often and think, what on earth is he asking about? It's not the issue of the day, it's not the issue of the week, and this refugee question is a classic. For the last 2 weeks, it's what I've been raising as the SNP leader at Westminster. He hasn't. It's come from the Labour backbenchers, from the likes of Yvette Cooper. And so on the issues that matter, often it's the SNP which is raising them, and I will continue to do that. What Jeremy Corbyn decides to ask is up to him. I know many voters around the country are asking what are the questions that he is asking, and of course the results for the Labour Party, with the honourable exception of Sadiq Khan in London, who I congratulate and note with horror the nature of the dog whistle campaign that the Tories run in London. But back to Westminster, we will take our opportunities to ask the things that really matter to people here and the rest of the UK. If the Labour Party wants to continue to miss the ball week after week, that's up to them. But we'll continue to be the effective opposition. That's what we were sent there to do. That is what we'll continue to do.
What do you think that, I mean, I'm interested, do you think that Labour tripping over in front of the goal, as you term it there, could ultimately have an impact on the timing of another independence referendum in Scotland, in that progressive thinkers in Scotland, even some of them who currently support the union, may think, well, listen, we're never going to see another Labour government. We've got to get out of this union.
Well, this is a huge part of the interest and the realignment of what is going on in Scottish politics. So not only a year ago did the SNP win almost every single constituency in Scotland, and the Labour Party being almost wiped out, only holding 1 seat. That's exactly what happened this time, the SNP winning almost all of the constituency seats, the Labour Party losing almost all of theirs. If you were a Labour voter who has stuck with the Labour Party in Scotland for thick and thin, you must be asking yourself, why are we run by a party, the Tories, who have only 1 seat in Scotland at Westminster and polled just over 20%? How long can this go on? And I'm sure the longer it goes on, and if there were to be a re-elected Tory government in the next UK election, I mean, does anybody really think that Jeremy Corbyn is going to be the next British Prime Minister? I don't think so. And for that reason, I think a lot of people in Scotland, as you suggest, will ask themselves, how long can this go on for? Now, this question about whether and when there will be an independence referendum in Scotland, it's not up to politicians, it's not up to the SNP, it's certainly not up to the Tories to say to people in Scotland they can't have one. If people want one, and if they want independence, that's up to them. Nobody should stand in their way. People don't want that at the present time. The polls have shifted in the direction of independence, but it's not a majority yet, and there isn't a demand for that referendum to take place yet. But if that should happen, whenever that is, that's exactly what will happen.
But it could change pretty quickly, couldn't it? I mean, if the UK votes to leave the European Union, you'd have one lickety-spit.
Well, if we're taken again out to the European Union against our will, that's a material change in circumstances. Voters in Scotland were told to vote against Scottish independence as a way of staying within the European Union, and should it come about that we're taken out whilst voting to remain in, that'll make a whole lot of people think, well, the game's a bogey. Now, do I want that circumstance? No, I do not want the United Kingdom to leave the EU and take Scotland out. I don't want that, so I'll be campaigning to remain within the EU. I would prefer, if and when the people in Scotland want to have a referendum, that we can do that on its own merits, and people are convinced on the basis of the positive ideas, the positive reasons for independence, or the positive reasons to remain within the UK, as opposed to the Project Fear nonsense we had in 2014, and frankly, which we're hearing a lot of in the European referendum now. That is what I hope for in the future, but it is the people in a democracy who are in the driving seat, and in the meantime, the SNP will continue to be the effective opposition, fighting day to day, week to week on the issues that matter at Westminster, and in the Scottish Parliament, a re-elected, historic third term of an SNP government with Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister, prepared to work across the parties and constructively. That is how we will approach things. I think that's what the public like. And for that reason, I think the support for independence will go up, because they'll see the alternative is continuing Tory austerity, being governed by a party we haven't even elected, that frankly thinks it can do whatever it likes in Scotland. Well, I think the time will come when people in Scotland have said we've had enough of this.
Mr. Robertson, great talking to you. Angus Robertson there, the SNP's Westminster leader.